It's an environment few civilians will ever experience.
This job is absolutely exhilarating.
The flight deck of an aircraft carrier.
This is the epitome of naval aviation.
It's going to be awesome. We're glad you're here.
In early April, photojournalist Andy Conkle and I had the adrenaline-charged opportunity to see what life is like in the U.S. Navy.
Everybody has their little part, and if there's one chink in that armor, like that puzzle can fall apart.
Watch step.
And over the next 3 days, we will take you with us on board the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 4.5-acre floating city on the sea.
It just shows the might of the United States Navy.
One pace forward, march.
We'll introduce you to Wisconsin sailors serving our country at every level of the ship.
His note is Lieutenant J.G. Cheesehead Diener.
From the skies above to the nuclear reactor below.
I thought it would be interesting to be able to say that I'm 18 years old, I split atoms for a living.
Launch alert 5.
We'll show you how the Navy carries out combat missions around the globe, protecting our nation's interests abroad.
As they're launching, we want to launch them 1 per minute. That's our goal.
And we'll take a ride in the future of naval aviation, the F-35 stealth fighter.
You paid for a generational leap and you got it.
A truly one-of-a-kind experience. Carl Deffenbaugh, Fox 6 News.
Come left, still course 155.
IKE tower, good to go, sir.
Green deck. Welcome to the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, floating somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. We're at the end of a whirlwind experience on board, and as we get on a plane for our flight back to the mainland, there's time for one quick thought. How the heck did we get here? Naval Station Norfolk is a sprawling complex in southeast Virginia that happens to be the largest naval base in the entire world. We arrived in early April, reporters from around the country, to learn what it takes to be in the U.S. Navy.
Are you ready to get fitted?
Let's do it.
And the first lesson is a simple one.
Yes, you have your pants on backwards.
Yes. You have to look the part.
This is the most confusing pair of pants I've ever put on in my life before.
The 13 buttons on the pants represent the 13 original colonies.
After getting things straightened out at the Navy Exchange, our second day brings us to the airfield on base for our trip to the Eisenhower. Taking off from Norfolk is one thing. Landing on a tiny strip in the middle of the ocean, a whole separate beast. The pilots of our C-2 Greyhound have to pull off what's known as a trap landing, the plane's tailhook catching one of 4 wires on the carrier deck. It's like a military-grade amusement park ride. And even more of a rush than the landing is the first glimpse we get through the doors. Open ocean and fighter jets. We are most definitely not in Wisconsin anymore.
It's one of the most dynamic working environments here known to man.
Right this way.
In a blur, we're taken inside for orientation.
It's going to be awesome. We're glad you're here.
And before we have a chance to get our sea legs, let alone let the adrenaline die down, we're back up top, less than 50 feet from an F-18.
This job is absolutely exhilarating.
The flight deck is a 4.5-acre chessboard, where the pieces are always moving.
Everybody has their little part, and if there's one chink in that armor, like that puzzle can fall apart. So it's constant, nonstop communication.
The Dwight D. Eisenhower, or Mighty Ike for short, returned December 30th from a 7-month deployment to the Mediterranean and Persian Gulf.
We'll see the kind of the ballet that we have. That takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of experience.
For a total of 27 hours, we experience what life is like for the more than 5,000 men and women aboard this floating city on the sea. There's a post office, a hospital,
Full operating room.
even a Starbucks.
Here I'm locked out of cold.
The quarters may be cramped,
It's a perfect single-person apartment, fully furnished.
and conditions can be tough,
Temperatures as high as 140 degrees.
This is the TAM.
but traveling the globe does have its perks.
On deployment, I got to see Naples, Bahrain, Dubai, Marseille.
I actually went inside Eiffel Tower and ate in a 5-star restaurant.
The average age aboard the Ike is just 22 years old.
Lieutenant J.G. Miller has the deck.
But from the seasoned officers on the bridge to the young sailors running the nuclear reactor,
I'm 18 years old and I split atoms for a living.
every single person has a role to play in making the aircraft carrier the most powerful force in the Navy.
You've become a little family out here.
And our time with that family is running out. We board the plane, strap in, and prepare for our own catapult shot off the edge of the flight deck. 0 to 150 miles per hour in 2 seconds. A fitting way to finish 3 exhilarating days in the U.S. Navy. With photojournalist Andy Conkle, this is Carl Deffenbaugh for Fox 6 News.
Good to go, sir.
The people that power the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower come from all over the country.
Went to school at the University of Colorado, go Buffs.
Grew up in North Philly, go Eagles.
To form their own team with a roster of more than 5,000 men and women.
On Wisconsin, go Badgers.
And at every level of the ship, Wisconsin is well represented.
His note is Lieutenant J.G. Cheesehead Diener, so that's my family. We are insane Packer fans.
From Milwaukee and Madison, Kenosha and Door County, they now sail the world's oceans as the embodiment of American power abroad.
When you see an aircraft carrier pulling into port, it's a sight to behold.
Commander Patrick Zekin has seen plenty in his 26 years in the Navy, much of which has been spent flying radar scanning E-2 Hawkeyes.
We are the, if you want to call it the eyes and ears of the strike group.
Others, like Clayton Kamasa from West Allis, have a more limited view.
How many times have you been out here since you started?
About 3.
And how long have you been on the ship?
A little over a year.
The now 22-year-old joined the Navy right out of high school to work on the nuclear reactor at the mighty IKE's core.
I thought it would be interesting to be able to say that I'm 18 years old and I split atoms for a living.
Pretty cool, though not in the Persian Gulf, where temperatures in the reactor plant can top 140 degrees.
You'd come out every day just covered in sweat, and you'd have to change your undershirt and underwear like 4 times a day just to stay fresh. It was unbearable. You had to acclimate to the heat. Just like acclimating to a cold winter up in Wisconsin, it's much the same.
The mighty Ike returned from its most recent deployment December 30th.
First rank, 1 pace forward.
The 7-month journey was everything logistics specialist DeMonte Lewis hoped to get out of the Navy.
I figured it was the most chance for me to get to explore the world because they always traveling.
From the north side of Milwaukee, he has now traveled halfway around the world.
Been to Italy. I climbed Mount Vesuvius. I actually went inside Eiffel Tower and ate in a 5-star restaurant.
I have
Though for some on board, even gourmet meals can't replace the tastes of home.
maters and burgers and cheese curds and Culvers and Cops and all the terrible things for you.
Yeah, okay.
There are different ways they measure the distance.
I have not had a chance to talk to my daughter for a week. That makes it very difficult.
And different reasons they chose a life in the service.
I know that I'm doing my part. I'm serving my country to protect those that I love back home.
But the one thing that doesn't leave them is that home, Wisconsin.
The second that I land in MKE and you see all this Packer stuff, it's like, oh yes, my people, I'm here.
Carl Deffenbaugh, Fox 6 News.
It's a huge program.
Mercedes Hill is a self-described paper pusher.
So I'll open up one here. Logs and records, this is where all the paperwork magic happens.
But few clerical workers get to spend their time in an environment as dynamic as this one.
So the crew that just swapped can go down, I'm gonna get their paperwork and log their flights.
Hill is a Milwaukee native and member of the Swamp Foxes.
Every single part gets tracked, and that's what I'm in charge of.
A helicopter squadron on board the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Took it off so they can cut up over here.
Right.
She may not be a pilot, but Hill plays an integral role in every mission her squadron flies.
1 number off or 1 hour off makes a huge difference on part transfer or aircraft being downed or parts being overflown.
And she's also exactly the type of person the Navy wants to promote.
She's my drive. I love my daughter to death.
A 15-year vet who has managed to balance a career with life as a single mother.
That moment coming home from deployment is like, oh man, I've missed you so much.
Over the past 30 years, the percentage of women in the Navy has grown from 8 to 18. And from ships to planes to submarines, all jobs are open to anyone.
I don't really think there is a difference being a female in the Navy. I mean, the military is very accommodating to everyone. Side by side.
Lieutenant Junior Grade Katie Diener grew up in Kenosha and 7 years ago traded a job at Rockwell Automation for life as an assistant public affairs officer.
Being out on the sea, you almost get a little addicted to it.
Part 2.
Both of these Wisconsin women plan on spending their entire careers in the Navy.
I'll stay in until they don't want me anymore.
First rank, 1 pace forward.
And to encourage more to follow suit, the Navy created something called the Career Intermission Program. Officers and enlisted sailors are able to transfer out of active service for up to 3 years, while keeping full benefits and the same rank or rate when they resume. The idea is to give women the flexibility to start a family while not sacrificing their career.
Mommy's doing this because, you know, I want to make your life better than what my life was.
Diener and Hill will tell you there are plenty of benefits to a life in the Navy, both professionally.
You know, when I'm sitting in a helicopter in the Mediterranean and you have one of those moments you're like, this is pretty awesome.
IKE.
I'm never just sitting behind a desk. You never know what's going to come out of your day. There's always something new. I'm always moving.
And personally.
I was able to pass my MGI bill over to her so she'll have money for college.
Ensuring a future at home while protecting American interests abroad. Carl Deffenbaugh, Fox 6 News.
Establish starboard delta.
Green deck.
There's a saying in the Navy that the flight deck of an aircraft carrier is 4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. territory.
One of the most dynamic working environments here known to man.
Control 11, good to go, sir.
Because unlike the Army or the Air Force, this branch of the military doesn't require a base of operations to launch missions all over the world.
For other countries to have aircraft carrier pull in, it just shows the might of the United States Navy.
For 3 days in early April, we experienced what life is like on board the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, where the nation's defense and conflicts abroad aren't just headlines, but daily realities.
The nice thing is people don't remember that we're at war because we're keeping people safe back home.
The mighty Ike returned December 30th from a 7-month deployment to the Mediterranean and Persian Gulf. The crew completed almost 2,000 combat missions and dropped more than 1,200 precision-guided bombs on ISIS targets in Iraq and Syria.
You see them leaving with bombs, and then they come back empty, and you're like, we did something today.
But even after getting back from deployment, the work continues. During our time on the ship, the sailors were in the middle of 2 weeks of arduous training exercises.
It's been a pretty grueling schedule, basically for the past year and a half, and I think it's really brought the crew together.
Our first day featured carrier qualifications for the pilots, as a senior officer tried to earn the role of mission commander by coordinating an elaborate strike involving 27 planes. And for every jet in the sky, there are hundreds, thousands more sailors on the ship involved in launching, recovering, and maintaining the aircraft.
You'll see the kind of the ballet that we have, and that takes a lot of training and takes a lot of experience.
Green deck.
On the second day, the mood on the bridge is tense.
Launch alert 5.
As naval exercises mimic the entire strike group passing through a narrow strait, when the aircraft carrier is at its most vulnerable.
You can see all the different straits that we were going through, and you can imagine, you know, which ones are more threatening and which ones are not.
Mock hostiles probe the surrounding water as helicopters ward them off.
We have some jets set to launch an alert in case there's some sort of an air threat that comes out quickly at us.
It's an elaborate and expensive scenario, one they hadn't done in a year.
Come left, still course 155.
But it's necessary to ensure the sailors' skills are honed and ready.
And try to stress the crew and stress the our training and our tactics and things like that now, because then it makes it easier when we're doing it for real.
As the centerpiece of U.S. naval operations and military might around the world. Carl Deffenbaugh, Fox 6 News. In the air high above the world's oceans, the F-18 Super Hornet rules supreme. A versatile jet as adept in a dogfight as it is at launching airstrikes around the globe. But its reign as the Navy's preeminent fighter is coming to a close.
That is 30-year-old technology in those, and this is new technology.
A new bird is ready to spread its wings.
Said it was easy to fly.
As part of our 3-day immersion with the U.S. Navy, we got a view from the cockpit at the future of naval aviation, the F-35C Lightning.
This is a generational leap.
You can see it really gets up and goes.
After a flyby of our ship, sure to earn me a demerit or two.
This is the stuff the captain of the aircraft carrier loves, right?
Yeah, way to go, Maverick. Way to go. Stop.
It's time to show off the full potential of the F-35. Stealth technology doesn't make the fighter invisible, but it's close.
You're over 50 miles away. Those things have no idea you're there.
Okay.
Sensors and computers on board analyze an entire battlefield in a fraction of a second.
This is where we would be able to figure out if it's a friend or if it's a threat, what type of threat.
And a full array of weapons, including precision bombs, means the lightning doesn't have to strike twice.
You paid for a generational leap and you got it.
Speaking of cost, each of the Navy's versions of the F-35 goes for a cool $120 million. In early years, the program was plagued by missed deadlines and budget overruns.
We were behind on a lot of stuff, but since 2010, they re-baselined the program, and we have been making all of our gates there.
And Tom Hawley with Lockheed Martin says it's an investment in America's air superiority going forward.
We have to look at the biggest kid on the block, and that's probably going to be China. In the next few years, they're going to have 5 carriers or so.
The Navy does not face much resistance while launching airstrikes in Iraq or Afghanistan, but that would not be the case while flying combat missions over, hypothetically, North Korea.
Survivability is a big piece of this. The stealth and fusion allows us to go into those contested areas and come out alive.
You ready to go?
As we head back to our carrier, there's one last demo to complete. Pulling off a trap landing is the final step before a pilot gets his wings, but the systems in the F-35 make it relatively easy, even for a novice reporter.
They said with this, you can actually come across the ramp with your hands in the air and still catch a 3-wire once you've clicked into that system.
I think they're starting to acknowledge that it's probably going to change the training dynamic for the Navy.
Now we can take that and spin that on some other tactics that we need to work on, jamming, air-to-air, air-to-ground, dropping bombs and stuff.
Ensuring a new generation of Navy pilots remain the baddest birds in the sky. Carl Deffenbaugh, Fox 6 News.